Welcome to MedEvidence. This podcast is a joint production between MedEvidence and What the Health Just Happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's episode of What the Health Just Happened, where we talk about all things healthcare, community, business, and life. The goods, the bads, the ups, the downs, the lefts, the rights, and everything in between. We are so fortunate to have on a variety of guests to share their industry expertise and experience, and today is no difference. If I had to guess, we will talk a lot about healthcare, a lot about community, right? Maybe some business, definitely life. I want to do some dad stuff here. More importantly, this is brought to you by MedEvidence, who, again, if you have not heard this show with Dr. Corn and their team, it is incredible. The truth behind the data. They peel back the onion on very complicated topics in healthcare. Today, we're going to talk about diabetes, right? How it affects, how do you manage it? Let's get to the intro. Ken Amaro worked in broadcasting and television for how long?
42.
And 42 years.
Yes, sir.
Dang, I turned 42 on Sunday. I didn't want to get there.
So I've been on TV just as long as you've been alive.
You've been around. But now you are a city councilman for District 1 here in Jacksonville.
That's correct.
Which
I'm serving my first term, about a year and a half.
First term, year and a half in, local politics. Again, we're going to talk a lot about type 2 diabetes, maybe some type 1 too if it comes in there. How do we manage it? What goes on? Let's start with this. Where'd you get that hat? If you're hearing this on the radio, you can't see it, but you can look online. Like, where is this hat from?
I'm a hat collector, Eric. First off, thank you for having me, and I like the title.
What the hell just happened?
Yeah,
it's fun. It's fun.
H-E-double-L. No, not.
With a T-H.
Yeah.
H-E-L-T-H. You could say hell, by the way.
I for some reason, I started wearing hats, and it's amazing when I look at old movies and stuff like that. It was nothing unusual in the American culture. Guys wore hats, and they were pretty stylish and impressive and things of that nature. So all of a sudden, I found myself collecting hats. And this one particular brand, a couple of guys in New York, they make this.
What's it called? We love shout-outs.
Bellissimo.
Bellissimo.
Yeah.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah, and so I've got my collection of hats.
You look sharp.
Oh, thank you.
Jacket, pocket square, watches, glasses, hat. Like, you look sharp. So broadcasting 42 years. Yeah. Is this radio, TV? Anyone, if you live in Jacksonville, you're going to recognize this man because I did when you walked in.
It's mostly television. I started in radio. It's funny, and I was doing weekends on the radio station while I was in college, and what happened was one Saturday I showed up and the staff was gone. I'm like, what? I'm like, what in the world? The regulars, rather, they were gone, and the management had changed the format and got a whole new crew in, and I was just a part-timer, so I was on the weekend, so I was relatively insignificant. But then I started thinking, man, this is a little uncertain here. As much as I love being on radio, so I started making a transition to television. Local
TV, news stations, what stations, where'd you bounce around?
WTLV, WJXX. I did some part-time work at what is now Channel 17, WJKS. And radio, it was back in the day. I'm going back.
When you say back in the day, like what year?
I don't know.
The 20s,
80?
the 30s?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
I'm just messing with you, man.
81, somewhere there.
Okay.
It was, I can hear the call letters in my head. But it was, the slogan was no static at all. It was from the, I don't know if you watch movies like FM.
FM?
Yeah.
I don't know that movie. Anyone know that movie? I don't know that. It doesn't matter.
Anyway,
I will now.
There was a movie back in the 80s called FM, and it was about life in the radio business, and the slogan was no static at all. And it was an album-oriented radio station where we played long songs, like Inagata de Vida, Black Sabbath.
Long songs.
Yeah.
Metallica's got a couple 8-minute songs.
Like that. Alice Cooper.
You look like an Alice Cooper guy. I love it.
Well, that's it's funny you should say that, because when I took the job, I knew nothing about the music. I'm like, what the heck am I listening to? It was a popular radio station, and I worked weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, and did 6-hour shifts. And
while going to school,
yeah.
And you mentioned you studied broadcasting, right?
Broadcasting.
Was that like growing up, I want to go into this space?
Well, I got introduced to radio because a friend of mine was attending the University of Connecticut. I went up to UConn with the thoughts of going to school there. And during the summer, UConn had a college radio station at the field house, and students could go in and do their blocks, And so he and I, we'd go over to the radio station, and he had a show, and I would be part of the show. And so that kind of indoctrinated me into broadcasting. Connecticut was too cold. I grew up in the Virgin Islands, and I had moved from the Virgin Islands to Connecticut. And as much as I love the place, I was like, I got to go.
Amen to that.
And so that's how I ended up in Florida. But it was fun. I mean, it's amazing with radio. People connect with you even though they can't see who you are. And back then, Leonard Skinner was big in the marketplace. And
from Jacksonville, by the way. From Jacksonville.
And I always laugh because I would have just completed playing Freebird.
That's a long song, too.
And the phones would blow up. Can you play Freebird?
This is great. I love, like, a little backstory before we talk about the healthcare side. You were in broadcasting. Yes. You know this world, right? So then you transition to on-camera asking questions. I'm going to go back to that later because I got some fun questions about being on camera and asking questions. Family man. Mm-hmm. Want to talk about your family? How important is it to you?
As long as about 43 years we've been married.
We like to. You guys know that. 43 years. That's a good run.
Yeah. My wife and I have 4 daughters.
4 daughters.
And now we have 3 grandkids.
So we talked off air. I said, what do you do for fun? Yeah. Do you remember what you answered? It was one word.
Family.
That was it.
It's important to me. I don't know what point that evolved as one of the biggest qualities in my life, but it has, and it's important to me. I try to do things, even though my kids are grown, I try to do things as a family. With my wife and my daughter. I still have a daughter who lives at home. But
I like, again, it's about painting a picture to talk about type 2 diabetes management, which we'll get to. MedEvidence and Encore, how they were involved. But I want to understand, you've been around just a couple years. I'm not calling you old, because guess what? I'm old now, too. Most of our staff looks at me like, you're an old dude. But you've had this incredible career in broadcasting, radio, then television, and now you're in local politics as of a year, right? So was that something you always wanted to do? What triggered that for you to say, let's do this?
It's I believe in predestination.
Are you a man of faith?
Yes.
Okay. As are we. So you can talk about faith openly here.
Okay. Predestination, that things are already laid out for you, the roadmap of life. You may take some twists and turns, but you're going to end up where you're supposed to be. And when I retired, it was a significant change, if you will, because for 40-plus years, you get up and you're energized. You're
purpose,
going, you're driven.
Community,
you're driven.
Financially.
Yeah. Well, forget the financial piece, but you're driven.
Yes.
And then you get to the place where do you go? What do you do? What do what's left of your life? Rocking chairs or not, it just doesn't fit into my equation.
It's pretty boring.
If you will.
It's pretty boring.
Watching television didn't fit into the metric.
What about bird watching? No thanks.
And I don't fish. I don't golf.
Oh,
man. So it for me, I was looking for a way to continue being connected to the community. And so this opportunity came up where the incumbent had reached the end of her term, and someone suggested if I would want to serve in that area. And I use the word serve because that's how I look at it, as a vehicle of service. And so I gave it some thought, meditated, prayed, because of the hyper-partisanship in our culture is just something that I really want to get into, and I stepped into it.
So what year, I promise we'll get to diabetes here in a second, what year did you retire?
21.
So 21, and we could talk about code if you want. There's a lot of things that changed. A lot of people retired, changed industries. How long did you take off and realize, like, hey, I got to do something?
About 6 months, maybe.
6 months.
Yeah.
Was your wife saying, hey, you got to do something. You're driving me nuts?
No. My wife was a college professor, and when I retired, she said, I'm retiring as well. She had about 30 years of teaching as a professor under her belt. And so
locally?
Yeah.
Which college?
FSCJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a degree from there, by the way. Yeah.
And so she retired. And just as she's retiring, I'm thinking, what can I be doing? And that's how that evolved. And she jokingly tells friends, I'm retired. He's the one that went and got a job. So.
This is, again, just painting a picture as we go into. Can I mention both companies? I'm already saying it on air, even though we can edit this. So MedEvidence is a show predominantly, truth behind the data, which I love, taking very complicated topics in healthcare on every sector and section possible, and peeling it back and talking like very complicated stuff. Encore, which is based in Jacksonville, is doing a lot of medical research, which we'll get to in a second, especially after the commercial break, because I got questions I'm pointing over here. You can't see this on the radio. So they set this up. I love it because this is a really important conversation. We're looking at a very successful human being, right? A father of four, a good husband, a man of faith, a sweet hat wearer, now a grandfather. You had something happen a decade ago.
Yeah.
What was it?
One day I was working, and I'm sitting on the anchor desk, and I'm looking into the teleprompter, and the words are jumbled, and I'm puzzled. I am like, what's going on? I can look at the paper in front of me. I don't have a problem, but I'm looking at the prompter. And
blurry or like jumbled words?
Just blurry.
Something was off.
Yeah, yep. just blurry like. And obviously I became concerned as to what was going on. And at the same time, I noticed that I was going to the bathroom more frequently.
Peeing, let's say that. Urinating.
Yeah. Just,
my kids would say number one, not a number two.
Well, it's like, I went an hour ago, and now I got to go again. And it's always urgent. It was always
like
urgent.
Right now.
Yeah, I got to go right now. And
so blurred vision. This goes back to like signs and symptoms of it.
Precisely. Which I was not aware of at the time.
Hey man, we're gonna hit that a little.
And so I take my health seriously, and so I said I need to go see the doctor, and I went, and that was the diagnosis: type 2 diabetes.
Was it a? This is really designed for men who take their health for granted or ignore, and then something happens. Was this a primary care physician?
Yes.
So you had a primary care physician. Yes. You call, and mind you, this is 10 years ago. Yeah. Now, do you know what it takes to get to a primary care physician? 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, it's incredible.
We'll stay off that. So you call your doc. They say, let's get you in here. Yeah. Okay. So you walk into the doctor. What tests do they run? What do you do?
Well, first the question was, why you here? What's going on? Da-da-da-da. And I remember doing the blood glucose thing.
Fasting.
Well, no.
Oh,
there
on
was
the
no
spot.
fasting on the spot because I didn't know I needed to fast. I made the appointment.
Yep.
And I showed up, and went through a series. I distinctly remember the blood test for glucose, and then the monitor said that my glucose numbers were 300 plus. I think 300 was the range of the monitor.
If I know, this is my experience in healthcare, right? It says really high, and their max number is 300.
Yeah,
so that means you're over 300. You could have been sitting at 700.
Probably. Again, it was beyond the range of 300.
This is to paint a picture for men who avoid this stuff, and I'm sure there's some guilty men in this room that take this for granted. Yeah. You felt normal.
I did.
Right? You were living day to day.
I did.
Nothing.
I didn't have any anything that would say you're heading to a diabetic stroke or anything of that nature. Nothing except the frequency of going to the bathroom and then experiencing the blurry vision when I was trying to read something. So there were no other symptoms that I knew of. I'm one of those who believe that regardless of your age, if you have health insurance, you do an annual exam. I was doing annual exams, and nothing was indicated. So at some point from my last annual physical until that experience, something changed, and I don't know what it was.
So you had seen a doctor that's great you were doing that. Some men will go years without seeing a doctor.
Oh, no, I'm one of those who believe that if you have insurance, go see the damn doctor.
I love it. If you have insurance, go see the damn doctor. That's a T-shirt. So I like to throw out medical terms. If Dr. Korn was here, so polyuria, that means lots of urination. Okay. We say peeing often.
Yeah.
Did you notice that before the blurred vision? Like, were you like,
yes,
man, I'm peeing a lot?
It was like a couple of days, but I, in all honesty, Eric, it was a few days before the blur vision, but I never connected the two.
But this is a short span and pretty quick.
Yes. Okay. It's like within a week and a half of, But I noticed I was going, but never thought why or anything like that. Just thought I was drinking too much or whatever. And then all of a sudden the two connected.
As we go along, how do you put an emphasis on certain things, especially for MedEvidence? One is frequent doctor visits, right? You're going annually. There's so many men out there guilty.
Yes.
I went years without seeing a doctor.
If you feel you're healthy, you think that you don't need. Yeah,
I'm fine. Right. So seeing a doctor is important. Running that blood work is important. You had something that happened. There's a lot of guys out there that don't notice or don't think about it. You had two things that happened. So you go, you see the doctor, they prick your finger. How they test your blood sugar?
Prick my finger.
Finger stick high. Yeah. And what did the doctor say to you?
He said, I ought to send you to the emergency room, to the hospital. And then and I can remember it very clearly, the follow-up question or series of questions as to how do I feel? Am I experiencing anything? And I said, no, I feel as fine as I did when I came in. And he subsequently gave me diuretics and
water pill.
Pills.
We don't know who's listening. Like diuretic helps you flush out water. A lot of people call it a water pill.
Then there was some metformin.
Any insulin?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't remember him doing anything.
Metformin water pill.
Yeah, to bring.
This is about a decade ago.
Yes. And then I subsequently was referred to an endocrinologist.
The endocrinologist, what did that look like? The appointments, follow-up, tests?
It was just a little bit more exaggerated than what I experienced with my primary care. And that led to a treatment plan, if you will. And later on, it led to taking my blood pressure changed as well, which apparently
up or down. Blood pressure went up. Okay. No history of high blood pressure.
No. And so today I take a blood pressure medication once a day to minimize the risk of complications from the diabetes and my blood pressure. And I'm on Mounjaro, GLP.
Let's hit that the second half. Sure.
I just started that treatment within the last month and a half, and the success of that is that I have been able to lose some weight.
How much?
I've lost about 20 pounds.
In how
25
long?
Pounds in a month.
Oh my gosh.
Month and a half, maybe.
And that's diagnosed for type 2 diabetes, not obesity. That's the biggest thing people talk about.
Well, part of my diagnosis, if I recall correctly, was weight gain. I'd always been a skinny guy, and you develop a inactive lifestyle, and all of a sudden the pounds come on, and they don't come off like that, So, I was until recently I was walking around at 280.
What are you at? Can you share? What are you at now?
I'm at yesterday I had my visit. I'm at 272, but in November when I went in, I was 287.
Again,
I've lost 25 pounds.
What are treatment measures? Yeah. Again, we're about to go to a commercial break here in a couple minutes.
My endo would always say that if I can lose some weight, it will improve, and it's one of the most difficult things.
You're not 25.
No,
you can eat a whole pizza at 25.
Your lifestyle, And my other weakness is I'm a bread guy.
Potatoes or just bread?
Bread. I go to the Italian restaurant or whatever restaurant. Now, where's the bread? Bring
Olive
the
Garden,
bread.
all you can eat breadsticks?
Well, no, not. But sometimes there, but because I like bread with texture, and the breadsticks are delicious, but they don't have texture.
This is gold.
They're a little too soft.
Yeah.
but I'm serious. I'm a bread guy.
Yeah.
And I part of my education with this experience is that, which I didn't know, was that carbs become sugar and contribute to the problem. And so I've learned to back up on certain things,
That is an incredible transition. So the second half, we'll talk again on the podcast. There will be no breaks, but for the radio purpose, I think it helps just to have a little break here. I think second half is your journey with treatment, what you've learned, how it's impacted family in your life. But I appreciate you sharing that story, your journey so far. And I think sharing this for anyone who's been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, knows someone who has. How do you manage it? How does it impact your life? Do you have fun so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got to make them laugh more. There it is. There it is.
This is the first time I've ever had a lengthy conversation about diabetes.
Okay. We're going to get real in depth the second half.
Fine.
Okay.
If I don't, I'm okay.
Any shout outs to anyone before the commercial break?
Yo.
MedEvidence, the truth behind the data. That's what the hell just happened. All right, welcome back to the second half of What the Hell Just Happened. Special episode today brought to you by MedEvidence, truth behind the data. We are sitting down with, can I call you a friend yet?
I'm okay.
We'll get there. We'll become friends eventually. Dude, who is this guy?
Eric, we're there.
Ken Amaro, now in politics, right? City Council, District 1, Arlington, was in broadcasting for years. Shared your story the first half, but we're going to dive pretty deep here on, you were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes about a decade ago, how it's impacted your life. You shared some of the first half. We're gonna peel back the onion, like I keep saying, and get some truth behind the data. Okay. So, diagnosed, doctor, endocrinologist, right? Checking your sugar. You got on metformin and a water pill or a diuretic. Now you're taking Mounjaro, which is a GLP-1. Thank you. My goodness, how do I forget that term? Which is help. That's recent. Yeah. We're going to rewind a little bit and talk about how treating this has impacted your life.
It's interesting because from the metformin, my endo decided to use a hybrid drug, Janumet, which is metformin and something else.
I don't know what the other part. Januvia. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I was doing that for a number of years, and it controlled my A1C. The highest it's been is like 7.8. it's below 7 now, but not quite to where I would like it to be.
Can I pause and explain? So A1C, right? If you prick your finger and take your blood sugar level, that's on the spot. You've eaten, you've not eaten. Your A1C is a longer version of what your sugar looks like. This is just whoever hears this. What is A1C? What is your blood sugar? So your A1C is a longer picture.
It's a barometer that you want to monitor because over, like say, a 90-day period, really what's going on with your body. And it's a great, at least I've learned, it's a great indicator if you're controlling your diabetes. And obviously, the higher the number go, then they have to use different methods of treatment. And often that's how folks end up on insulin when it's super high, if you will. But anyway, I was on the Janumet, and with the introduction of the GLP drugs, my endo kept insisting that if I can lose some weight, it would somehow benefit me and bring things, because he noticed that things were managed, if you will, and if I can change my body mass index a little bit, it would help. And so after my visit in November, when my A1C was 7.1, he got me on the Manjaro, and it's been working. The weight loss has been very subtle, not to me radical at all, but noticeable, and I feel good, and my numbers are good. And so he just had a visit this week and stated that numbers are good, and my endocrinologist is satisfied with the success of the GLP drug Manjaro, and wants to kind of augment my therapy with Giardians because of his words were the benefit of my heart, if you will, because diabetes can be sneaky.
It's like a ninja, man.
Yeah. You're looking at
I feel fine. I feel fine.
And then all of a sudden you have a
teleprompter's blurry. Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm following the therapy, and my hope is that I can just get down a little bit more and get my numbers.
We'll go back to clinical in a second because I think it's relevant. You in the home front, right? Has this impacted time with your wife, daughters, grandchildren? Do they understand the ramifications? Like, how is your family involved in this?
My wife is involved. My kids, I have not had that conversation with them. And don't ask me why. I don't know. I don't know. I just have not had that conversation with them. But she knows fully.
Is your wife involved day to day? So you're on a CGM, a constant glucose monitor.
It's interesting because she's the one that pushed me to get the CGM.
She did.
Yeah.
Good job, wife. All right.
It was, and the reason she did that is because I was inconsistent in my testing.
Can you be specific? Like, what was inconsistent? Once a week?
Well, once a week.
Once
maybe
a day
every other day or every other week.
Wow.
There is, unfortunately, when you're feeling fine, you guess. You don't test. And
I like that line.
So I was in that place. I'm fine. And so at the end of the week, I said, well, I hadn't checked my sugar all week. Let me check. So I'll test. And I guess what got me to that place of comfortability, if you will, is that I noticed that during the day my numbers would be fine. I would test and my numbers would be 130, 110, 130, 110 during the day. When I eat, it goes crazy. I go to bed at night and I get up in the morning and I test. It might be 140. It's been 160, that kind of thing. So I don't know what happened overnight. And so I got to a place that maybe I don't need to test every day, just so often.
You got comfortable.
Yeah. And so having a monitor and having it connected to my phone, I just look. And
is your wife attached to looking at your phone also?
No. It's shared with my endocrinologist
physician. Which this is an example for men. I'm telling you because I'm 42 years old.
Yeah.
I could share similar stories in this stage of life. We got two other gentlemen. They don't want to admit the last time they went to the doctor. Mm-hmm. But like you said, most men at any stage, 25, we're invincible. 35, we still think we're invincible. But 40, like everything changes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The metamorphosis creeps up on you.
Until something's wrong.
Yeah.
So the point of this, I think, is recognizing it earlier and taking care of it earlier. Since you've been diagnosed and you're treating it, and it constantly evolves and changes, what have you learned about yourself in this process?
And that's one of the reasons I've become a strong advocate for anyone that has insurance regardless of their age. For me, it's not an age thing. It's the fact that if you have health coverage that can give you access, go get yourself checked. Annual exams are early detection systems, if you will. And so I become a strong advocate for that because I understood when I was working and I had insurance, I took advantage of that. And I don't know how this crept up on me like that, if you will, but it did. And so now I'm living with it.
We don't have to get to this. So you're comfortable talking about this with your wife. Mm-hmm. You've not talked about it with your daughters.
No.
You're clearly comfortable enough to talk about it on whatever.
Yeah. And perhaps there hadn't been an occasion for me to have this conversation with my kids, because when we're with each other, we're not talking about health. We're enjoying life. We're talking about this and that and everything else. And so there was never an opportunity to discuss health, if you will.
So
my oldest daughter, as of late, she's always checking on me. How are you doing? How are you feeling? I'm like, I'm okay. What's supposed to be wrong?
I'm fine. Yeah, I love it. We're fine. I'm fine. The daily routine now. You talked about medications, the CGM.
Yes.
How often are you looking now? You used to do once a week. Are you looking daily now?
Yes. Every day I look. Not every hour.
But if it's high or low, you get alerted on your phone?
Yes.
That's what's incredible about
the alarm goes off. Yeah.
Let's talk about technology now. This did not exist 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? You stick your finger, where am I sitting? And if you don't feel like checking, you're not checking. Now you have these monitors that track you around the clock.
I've had friends who were type 1 and have to live with an insulin pump. And they, some of them have had the privilege of having some kind of monitoring, if you will, to indicate, hypo or hyper experience. It's interesting, and I'm not trying to be morbid here, but I remember when I moved into my neighborhood, my neighbor Wayne, he was an old guy, and he was type 1, and showed me his insulin pump and stuff, and he lived by himself.
This is prior to you diagnosed or after you were diagnosed?
After. And we had a conversation, and he was talking about how he's lived with this all his life, and tragically one day he was in the house, and I get his glucose got so low he fell asleep in the chair and never woke up. And
it's not morbid. It's just
he lived by himself, and so
no one there
to give him a glass of orange juice or anything of that nature. So I've always remembered that.
Yeah, that's, again, the difference between hypo or low and hyperglycemia, different signs and symptoms. You said you've had no experience really with low blood sugar because you're getting alerted.
Yes.
When you hit 70, you get an alert and hey, I got to put some sugar in this body.
Yeah.
So you talked about bread. Let's go back to that. This guy loves his hats and bread. His wife, his daughters, his grandkids, bread and hats.
If I go to a restaurant and there's no bread, I'm like, what up? What's going on?
Hey, we're out of here.
What kind of restaurant is this?
Have you noticed yourself limiting bread?
I've become more conscious, yes, as to how often. It's like today I ordered a sandwich for lunch. I decided just to eat half.
Where was the lunch from?
French pantry.
Oh, God, love that place. They got good bread. They got good bread. Sorry, not healthy. Okay, so
It was rye, by the way.
But this is a great example for other men who hear this. Like, how do you make decisions? You order this beautiful sandwich
And
from
it
the
was
French.
good.
So good.
Yeah.
You only ate half.
Only ate half.
Do you eat the second half later today?
I'm contemplating such, yes.
But again, that's spread out.
Yes.
What's on the sandwich?
And you know, I mentioned earlier that during my early diagnosis, my dietitian at the time said, be smart about what you're eating instead of, consuming large portions, spread your portions out, and was encouraging me not to miss meals, things of that nature, to try and maintain a steady diet, if you will, because the reality is that when you eat, your numbers go up. So, you want to play safe and say, I ain't going to eat, as if that's going to absolutely
that might be even
solve
worse.
the problem.
Yeah.
Precisely. So that was the reason for that education. And so I started. What's interesting is since I've been on the GLP drug, which is kind of an appetite suppressant, I don't eat as much. And it takes, I'm satisfied quicker, if you will. And so I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well,
but
I was going to say that the GLP ones, that's hours and hours and hours of conversation. Some people agree or disagree. Why are you using it? It sounds like it's working for you. That's great. This is kind of a loaded question here, and maybe you can answer or not. So can you think of a time where your diabetes has caused physical or emotional stress, where you're like, this is a problem?
No.
See, that's a win, I think. There's other people that happen. You're in a sweet spot. Is it because of education?
Perhaps. I think that's a piece. I had a very good friend of mine's. His name is Robert, and Robert had been living with type 2 diabetes all of his life and was never able to control it. He was
lack of education, didn't care.
He didn't care,
which is common. Which is common in men. I'm fine.
I shouldn't say he did not care. He didn't get rid of the bad habits, smoking, drinking, things of that nature. And his numbers were always, always. His A1C was always double digits.
Yep. Not good.
Not good.
What's the normal range for A1C? 6.5 or lower.
That's
and he's in double digits.
Yeah, he's in double digits. So he's on insulin. And then he started having diabetic wounds in his foot, and they could never be completely healed. Just when they were healed, again, because his numbers were always skewed. Then it led to gangrene, toes removed, foot removed, and he lived in Louisville. Eventually, he passed away, which was interesting because he passed away from a cancer that was in the liver, if I remember correctly. And I don't know if there's a connection.
I was gonna say that's you talk about another dialogue. Everyth's connected in our body, right? And if your body's constantly in a state of recovery, we talk about wound management. So if you're having a hard time with wounds healing, constant urination, blurred vision, like some men just don't it's fine. Why is this wound not healing? That's why the primary care physician going to get looked at matters.
My neighbor, I didn't know he's diabetic, and he was he had a wound on his foot and didn't do anything, and eventually he passed out. He passed out, and now he's at Cypress Village because they had to remove a section of his toes, and the guy's about 80 or something, and he's now in therapy and all that to be able to learn how to walk.
Was he treating his diabetes or just ignoring it?
It seemed, I don't know, just seemed like he was not paying the attention that he needed.
I'm gonna keep. I
He's a
keep
good guy. It's just
I go back to commending you,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
It's been 10 years. It's a diagnosis that some people panic and think of all these things, but it's a journey.
Yeah.
And it changes
Eric,
from year to year.
There are times that and these stories I'm sharing about people I know, there are times when they come into the frame and they're motivational that you don't want to have that experience. And so you start paying closer attention to yourself because the reality is, if you ignore, these are the consequences. And so
That snowball gets big real quick when you roll it down the hill.
When it gets to that place, it's even more difficult to deal with what you're dealing with.
What would you, so you don't have to share your age, but you look 10, 20, 30 years ago. What would you recommend to young men who aren't doing certain things? Because I love we can reinforce seeing a doctor, at least occasionally do your blood work, but in your diabetic journey, give some advice here. Besides buy his hats. These hats are sweet.
Well, we're one of the things about the beauty of life that we live as Americans. We have this choice to be able to do whatever the heck we want to do when we want to do what we want to do. Sometimes without thought, sometimes without considering long-term effects or anything of that nature. And I don't know anything about dietary guidelines or anything like that, but my encouragement would be to seriously pay attention to what you're eating. I mean, you get to a place in life and you realize that what you put in are contributing factors. And if you're not vigilant, you may just be putting junk in that's going to produce.
We're going to open a can here that I want to talk about. You do too. The American diet disaster.
Yeah.
You said it right. You learn about yourself. You have this diagnosis. How do you treat it? That's different. But what do you put in your body?
Yeah.
And bread, like you love bread, but if you live off bread, you're in trouble.
I love bread and I love cakes.
Oh man, that's tough. Hey, I feel bad, man.
But I don't. I've gotten wiser. I don't eat cakes like I used to. I'm still consuming bread, but I'm trying to push back and be selective in the types of bread and things of that nature. I try to do whole wheat versus white bread. But
have you alternated any other part of your diet, like eliminated sugary drinks, increased protein intake?
I usually don't drink sugary drinks except sweet tea.
Oh man, good luck. Again, it's like how do you? Yeah, I'll do a lot of things, but I am not eliminating this sweet tea.
No, I didn't say that.
Right.
I said what I've done is I'd say let me have an Arnold Palmer. So but if it's too sweet, if I go to a restaurant and I order sweet tea, and it's too sweet, I go immediately. Yeah, right away.
But 10 years ago, did you feel that way, or you drank that and thought,
I'll
heck
probably
yeah.
drink it. Yeah.
That's awareness. That's education.
So what I do is I'll ask the server, get me a glass of water with some ice, and I'll take the tea and pour it in the water with the ice and kind of dilute it.
Great tip.
Yeah.
These are low hanging fruit, right?
And so I've diluted the sweet tea. I still have the flavor, if you will, but it's to a place where I find it acceptable to my palate.
And you've also, I love that example you recognize. Now when you drink a certain sweet tea, you're like, oh, it's too sweet.
Oh, yeah.
But 10 years ago, you're drinking 2 or 3 glasses of that.
I'd suck it down like it was.
And it goes back to the education thing, right? Yeah. So, how do you not eliminate bread? I think we could get into a whole complicated conversation about how the body works. Increasing your protein and fiber intake before carbohydrates. But for you specifically, what low-hanging fruit for anyone that hears this, these are some things that I've done that I've noticed made a difference. The sweet tea thing, I love that tip, right? Limiting your bread, constant glucose monitor. What else have you done that's
I've added more fruits into my diet.
What kind of fruit?
Grape, primarily. I love grapes. I do blueberries.
Superfood.
Watermelons. That's about it. Sometimes pineapple, but
What about vegetables?
I'm not that good.
He's like, I want.
but I again, for me, it's an evolving thing, and so I'm doing more salads than ever before. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I mean, just the day before yesterday, I was ready for lunch. I said, I'm going to get me a Cobb salad, and it was good.
10 years ago, what would you have got at the same restaurant?
Barbecue or something.
With an extra side of bread.
Yeah. A barbecue sandwich with some baked beans and load up.
And again, we love free
French
shout-outs here in
fries,
Northeast Florida. So the French Pantry, today, you got lunch, ate half your sandwich.
Yes.
Do you think that's attributed to the Mangiano, or are you learning stuff?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think the drug which I take on Mondays, which is interesting, today's Wednesday, I take it on Monday. It's a once a week thing, but there's something about it that it sustains throughout the week, and so it has this effect on your appetite throughout the week, which I think it's interesting. So it makes me feel full sooner.
It is, man. Again, I could tell my opinions
and maybe
about
it's
the drug.
just psychological. I have no idea, but it makes me feel
works.
full sooner.
Okay, so here we are. He's not a day over 21, right? You got another 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
What do you envision the next 5 or 10 years look like treating this diagnosis?
I'm 70 years of age, and
What?
Yeah, I turned 70. But I'm just looking for good health until whatever.
Okay. Is there things you might have changed if you knew now 20 years ago?
Yes. Number one, I would have paid more attention to my weight gain. I think one of my, and I don't know if this to be true, but when I was in my 20s and early 30s and in my teens, I was always active, moving,
Yeah,
basketball,
activity.
karate, just in some strenuous sports that just kept you going, and I think my body, I keep saying this, that because of those early years, my body became conditioned. And so when I got to the place where I developed this sedentary lifestyle, that I had enough cushion to, and I don't even know if this is a fact or anything, but to bear whatever was to come. And I say that to myself.
You sound like most men I know, myself included.
Yeah. Well, it's if I was, because there are guys who are in their 20s and 30s and they're not active. They don't do anything, and so I feel that kind of assistance.
Movement.
Yeah.
I love it. We're down to it. We got about a minute and a half here.
Sure.
We asked what you learned about. What are you grateful for in this process? Maybe nothing. Over the last 10 years, like I'm actually thankful for this part of this journey.
Well, I in reference to my health, as I reflect, I wish I'd paid more attention. I have no regrets really beyond that. If I'd paid more attention, I could have been a little bit ahead of the curve, if you will. I think that there's so much that we take for granted until you're at that crossroad, and then you realize the decisions that you made. But for the most part, I'm at a place in my life where there's a song that's been played on the radios that's with these words.
Freebird?
No.
Sorry.
But it's become kind of a mantra for me, and the words are, it's good to be alive, but it's best to live.
Oh, I like it.
And so I'm trying to live.
Yeah.
And every day, and enjoy what life has. I think it's Churchill that said something to the effect that during, when Britain was at war with Germany, he said some people are given opportunities and all they do is look for difficulties. while some people who are faced with difficulties try to find opportunities. So,
He's got some nuggets here.
That's been my perspective.
I don't know how to. Well, that's a first. That's the alarm saying the time's up. Doesn't matter. Ken Amaro, City Council District 1, ex-broadcaster, news guy, husband, father, grandfather, sweet hat wearer. But I would say type 2 diabetic, living this journey and sharing a story for a lot of men who need to hear this. So thank you for joining this.
I hope someone takes something away.
One person. We'll take one. If there's 100 or however many, it's great.
And that's
a win. MedEvidence, thanks for setting this up. That's what the hell just happened.
Thanks for joining the MedEvidence podcast. To learn more, head over to medevidence.com or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform.